This is the very first time I've ever done this, so we're both at this same place for the first time, okay? Convergence of time and people and place and thing, okay? I'm a first here, so you just want us to read an excerpt and talk about the book? Well, this book started, he just read my bio, you know, being a filmmaker and working in LA in the film industry for a long time, and this book came about after being here in Nashville for 3 or so years, about 3 years ago. And it was before my 50th birthday, and I thought I was going to lose my mind. It was just something about being here, and I was new here and knew some people, but it was just a time in your life of just feeling like I hadn't accomplished anything. I mean, even after you read all the stuff I did, or, you know, what was the meaning behind everything? What was the thing that was going to wake me up going forward, because I was just feeling just this thing about turning 50 and all the things you think you should have done, you know, before you're 50, you know, I somehow hadn't aligned that up in my psyche, despite all the things I'd done. And so to kind of keep myself from going crazy, and to kind of prove that we're finding the meaning, I started writing these essays and going back to when I was a little kid in North Carolina, and the people, my great-grandmother, my great-grandfather, and the places I'd been, you know, the small towns, and even Paris, and the things, and being a part of this world the past 52, almost 3 years, and how the world has changed from learning how to type on a typewriter to now using a PDA, or whatever you want to call it. And just having this purview of all this stuff on the outside, but also having this stuff on the inside in that journey. So that's kind of how this Influentia, 50 Years on Earth as It Is in Carolyn, came to be. It didn't start out as a book, it just started out as me writing these essays, and I was encouraged to keep writing, and, you know, got to, you know, decide to do 50. And so I'll read just one actually now, since we have time. It's about relevance and you know, making emotional connections. Everybody has emotional connections with places and people and things, and just wanting to share mine in spaces that I hope would encourage others to go look at people, places, and things that inspired them and kind of shape who they were, and also look at where you were at a time in history and a larger world. So, and all that to say, I'm going to read one about the Jackson 5. Because you know, growing up, as you'll see, with the Jackson 5, I mean, you can't say that any other people, I mean, there have been, but for me, and a lot of people, I think, in this room, they grew up with us. They were a part of us and defined so many moments in our lives. And, you know, also you have personal memories about where you were, you know, and things. So I'm going to read one called the Jackson 5. I don't know where I was the first time I heard the glittering piano intro to I Want You Back, but I do know that since then I turn up the volume on whatever electronic device it pumps from. My life hasn't been the same since their first TV appearance on the Hollywood Palace, contrary to most accounts of their being on the Ed Sullivan First. Even though I love the Temptations, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, and the Spinners, the Jackson 5 were my age, and I longed to be near them because I believed they'd understand me, and I them. I knew that we'd feel the same way about things, which they proved to be true by their song lyrics. Maybe tomorrow you'll change your mind. I don't know why I love you. Stevie Wonder actually wrote that one, but I'm sure enough the one you need. Right On magazine devoted its entire premiere issue to them. We young black girls no longer had to rely on Tiger Beat, which featured David Cassidy, Bobby Sherman, or Donny Osmond on its cover, for pictures of Michael and his brothers buried in the back. Right On was filled with full-color pages of each chocolate brown Jackson and a couple of silvers with their well-groomed prose. Each page chronicled their day-to-day life, their migration from Gary, Indiana to Encino, California, their favorite foods, hobbies, and other pastimes. It said they spend most of their time practicing for their shows. Another thing I could relate to, having been involved in every church and school program since I could walk. Every black girl in North Carolina had this issue of Right On magazine. And during research or milk break, we'd all convene to discuss who was our favorite Jackson and why. While most of my peers went for Michael or Jermaine, I declared Marlon as the one I fancied most, mainly to be different, and I didn't want to share. I taped every large fold-out poster of the whole J5 on my cinder block cinder bedroom wall. Then I clipped out a small black and white picture of Marlon and kept it in my billfold. When my 5th grade teacher, Miss Pierce, caught a glimpse of it when I was paying for a book I ordered one day, I told her it was my boyfriend who lived up the road in Philadelphia. Write On also provided a mailing address where I could write to Marlon and his brothers, which I religiously did every Saturday night, wishing I could be out on a date with them, having a hamburger, fries, and milkshake, comparing our dance moves. On rainy days, when we couldn't go outside for recess, Miss Pierce let us play our own 45 records and dance. Needless to say, I brought Motown, except for the Spinners, who were on Atlantic. The white girls brought the Osmonds, and the white boys brought Three Dog Night or the Beach Boys. We engaged in heated debates about whether or not One Bad Apple was a ripoff of Mama's Pearl, playing sections of each song to prove our point. Fearing accusations of treason, I never confessed I'd recorded One Bad Apple on my reel-to-reel tape recorder and pretended not to know the lyrics. I wanted to pop Boogie Bullet in the mouth when he called the J5's mini bikes pictured on the back of their ABC album Lawnmowers, just because he had a Honda CT-70. I defended them as though they were my own kin, pointing out that since they rode in planes and limos most of the time anyway, they were probably just posing with those for the album cover. The whole 5th grade class found a peaceful medium when Rockin' Robin came out. I think the white kids felt it was okay to dance to it because the white band had recorded it before the J5 did. 9 years later, in a dorm room at SUNY Purchase, I was challenged to guess who was speaking the intro to Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. I hadn't heard from the Jackson 5 since the Destiny album, except for seeing pictures of Michael with Brooke Shields at Studio 54. Once Michael's first solo effort was revealed, me and every other diehard Jackson disciple knew we'd be swinging from a whole new kind of star, without any assistance from his brothers, but under the precious guidance of Quincy Jones, every note of Off the Wall reignited the hearts of former 5th graders around the world. By the time Thriller came out and sold 20 million albums, the 4 Jackson brothers had faded into obscurity, and us colored girls had to share Michael with every spectrum of the known universe. I could never keep up with the Thriller dance, but this was the age of the Walkman, and I strutted with my Crown Prince of Rhythm and Blues from the East Village to Rockefeller Center, courtesy of my Iowa stereo headphones. Without missing a beat, the king of pop conquered a whole new generation, as evidenced by my daughter's heavy rotation of his Moonwalker VHS. Through Man in the Mirror, Michael beckoned us to take a look at yourself with the same passion he promised to be there 2 decades prior. Anyone who had a pulse on June 25, 2009, the day Michael stopped, definitely felt the disturbance in the force. Just like the death of JFK or Elvis, we all remember where we were when we heard MJ had left the building. I was surfing the web at my miserable day job at a bankruptcy law firm, grasping for an inkling of peace before the next misguided soul called sobbing about their car being repossessed or not being able to pay their cable bill on time. While MSN's homepage stated that Michael had been rushed to the hospital after going into cardiac arrest, TMZ had to trump everybody and declare him DOA. Each of us carries at least one invincible human around in our bosom, an untouchable person who can defy death, exist beyond time, and dwell intimately in our ethers, whether near or far. Sometimes it's a relative, but our coveted stage and screen icons most readily fit into this compartment of our psyche. I thought to myself, these gospel-mongering fools have really gone batshit this time. As the truth of Michael's death unraveled, so did that space in my chest where it lived since the beginning of my creative consciousness. As the media monster revved itself up and the various and sundry visions of Michael splashed across screens of all sizes, I realized that it wasn't the most recent image of Michael that I grieved, but the entertainment prodigy from the cover of Right On that gave us black girls bragging rights in the 20th century pop culture, and the sensitive music icon that united a planet through song. As I watched vintage photos of Michael, Tito, Jermaine, Jackie, and Marlon glide and harmonize, I lacked the ability to mirror back the pride, passion, posture, and glee they'd injected into me decades before. I woefully recognized that the void I felt was not only for the death of MJ, but for the love he'd so fervently bid me to save that had silently seeped from my own soon-to-be 50-year-old soul since 5th grade recess. I didn't know where it went or how long it had been gone, but I definitely wanted it back.
As a transition, you know, myself working in the entertainment industry, I truly find that story very relevant to me and my experience, so especially the Michael Jackson piece, Jackson 5. But I want to talk about my book, Hiding in Hip Hop, and what compelled me to write such a phenomenal, I guess some would say a groundbreaking book. I remember being a young boy in Detroit, Michigan, 13 years old, and I came across an album at my aunt's house in her living room. It was this blue album, so I put the album on, and I heard this beat, and I heard this song come on. A hip hop, a hip it to the hip hop, and you don't stop. A rockin' to the bang bang boogie, say up jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie to beat. So I stopped it, put the needle back to the beginning, and I started again. I was like so compelled by this song and these lyrics, and I have never heard hip hop music before. And at that moment, I said I had to be a part of whatever this phenomenon was, whatever this music was, I needed to be a part of it. So I devoured myself into the culture of Word Up magazine, Right On and Black Beat, reading them, seeing LL Cool J, Salt and Pepper with the asymmetrical haircut, Run DMC with the Kangos on and the Levi jeans and the shell toe Adidas. I wanted to emulate that. So I plotted, how am I going to get to New York City to make all this happen? What can I do to get there? And lo and behold, I just had a dream. And as Biggie said, it was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine, Salt and Pepper and Heavy D up in a limousine. That was literally my precursor to me getting to New York City. So I actually ended up getting to New York City through an internship at CNN after I graduated from college. And it was from there my life had totally transformed. I had, by coincidence, as the only minority at CNN at the time, black male minority, I met a black female producer, and she's pulled me to the side. She said, "What do you want to do, like, in this industry?" And I said, "Well, I want to be a producer." She said, "I need you to meet someone." And I said, "Okay, I'm young, I'm 21 years old at the time, fresh from college. I don't even know what a producer does. It just sounds good." But she said, "I want you to meet a friend of mine named Forrest Whitaker. He's working on this movie right now. It's called, at that time it was Waiting to Exhale he was working on." And she put me in contact with him. And I think literally that's when my life and me changed and my life changed. And speaking with him really got me grounded into how to navigate in the entertainment industry. And after that, I went and worked at the Apollo Theater. After that, I went and worked with Spike Lee. I worked on a movie called Crooklyn. And then I worked with Spike. At that time, he was working with Michael Jordan. That's when he was doing all the Jordan commercials. So I was in the company of all these great people, and I was like, wow. But every time I looked out into the audience of the people who I thought were a reflection of me, I didn't see a reflection of me because I was still hiding my sexuality of who I was. So all the men that I saw, it was this hyper bravado, masculine image that was always pushed inside of television, especially in hip hop at that time. That's when Biggie was on the scene, Craig Mack, DMX was on the curse of coming up, the whole Rough Riders was coming through, Eve and all them. So I never saw anybody that looked like me, so I always felt like I had to emulate that in order to sustain myself in the entertainment industry. Then I got the fortunate blessing and call to go to Los Angeles, and I worked with Keenen Ivory Wayans, and I worked with the Wayans family. And at that time, Keenen had just got the talk show, the Keenen Ivory Wayans show. And I worked with him and his brothers. And so I'm learning the business. I'm learning the business from all these powerful people who have power, who have say, who have a voice. But I'm still not seeing a reflection of me. I'm looking for identity that I latch on to, somebody I can say that I can relate to that. I still didn't see anyone. So at that time, I started meeting other young men who I started noticing who did look like me, but it was almost, they were always telling me, we can't talk about our sexuality. We have to hide who we are. So I got actually acclimated to a whole nother down low culture, which was the underworld call, of hip hop. And I started meeting artists and rappers and singers and actors and producers and all these other people who were hiding their sexuality. And we would meet at, somebody's house, at night, on the weekends. And you have to go back to work on Monday. You say you were just hanging with your girlfriend or you with some friends. We are those code words that we would use to hide our sexuality. And I got the call to come back to New York City from MTV. And I literally didn't want to go back to New York. I was like, I love LA, I want to stay here. They called me again like 3 months later. They're like, we're not going to call you back again. We need you to come to New York. We have a job here for you. So I packed my bags, came back to New York. MTV for 10 years, producing movie awards, video music awards, hip hop honors, rock honors, all those live award shows. Work with these people, these celebrities, and knowing that we all had something in common. And I got to a breaking point, because a lot of the, started having relationships and intimacies with, I talk about in the book. And I remember a friend of mine who happened to be an R&B singer, Grammy Award-winning singer, and he saw me in so much pain. He said, you really need to start writing your story. Because you have a story that people will relate to, that you can tell, and they will identify with that. And at that time I wasn't out, I hadn't told my family, I was still hiding, I was still trying to find my way, I was still trying to navigate the business. I was at MTV, I had climbed the ladder, just looking around at the landscape. You don't see people like you of color in executive decision-making roles. So I was trying to make these choices. How do I impact and make a change, but at the same time stay in the closet without anybody finding out? And I had come from so much trauma in my life. And I talk about the trauma and experience of it in my book, which I tried. It was very difficult, one of the things of rewriting and reliving a lot of the elements of the book. And I think that's what I was trying to escape from, was my childhood growing up with a mother who was a heroin addict. My mother was a prostitute. And so my mother was in and out of our lives. So I never really got to know my mother. So I think for a child growing up in the inner city and you don't have a mother, you see your friends and your parents, your other friends and your relatives who have their parents, and you keep questioning and asking God, why me? Why is this happening to me? So I used to always ask, why me? Why me, God? Why do I have the mother I have? Where is my father? How come money is routing around my parents to help make this happen? Then the tragedy struck that from my mother's heroin addiction became AIDS. And that's when AIDS was big at the time in the 80s. So she contracted the AIDS virus from a shared drug use experience. And we only found out in our family because she gave birth to my baby brother who was born with the disease. So that's the only way we found out. Oh, I'm sorry. So, so as a young boy growing up, I'm trying to find out my place in society and the world. Of why me? And even in college, when I got the call that my baby brother had died and I had to go home and I had to bury my baby brother. And then a year later to get the call that my mother had died. And I was so happy at the same time. I knew she wasn't in pain anymore. But I remember when I had left to go to school, to college in the fall. And I went to go visit my mother. And she was really ill. And I remember when I was leaving her house, and she called to me, she said, I love you. And that was the first time I ever heard my mother say, I love you. So it meant a lot to me. Because I said, finally got a chance to hear my mother say, I love you. Because that's all I ever wanted as a young boy growing up, was to hear my mother say, I love you. So I think that's when my friend who knew my story kept pushing me to write. Because he said, you have to tell your story, because there are a lot of people who are going through your experience who will benefit from what you have gone through. And I kept fighting it because my mother had 4 children. So it was me, and I have 3 brothers. So I already lost 1 brother. So at the time when I was working, I just finished working with Spike Lee. And I remember getting another call from my cousin in Detroit who said, you need to come home because my other brother was in the hospital. So I said, okay, what happened? And we found out that he had AIDS. He was 19. And we found out that he had gotten, because we were split up as kids, and he went to a group home, he was sexually assaulted in a group home. So I lost 3 important people in my life to the AIDS virus. So I was like, how can I write this story? What story can I write? How can I write about a rape to somebody who it shouldn't have happened to? How can I write about my mother? How can I write about those people? So I lived my life in trauma, afraid that if that story got out, that I would not be loved. Because that's all I ever wanted, was just to be loved. So writing this story was so therapeutic for me. And I get so many letters and emails from people across the world who have told me how much Hide and Hip Hop has changed their life. From seeing someone who has gone through so much trauma and pain in their life to come out of it and come out of it successful. Because I refuse to be a victim. And I refuse to not let no one else go through this. So now that I know I can help save someone else, I think that is why God was helping me go through what I went through, because now I understand my life's purpose. Because I know I'm not the only one. There's a whole community of us that needs to be saved. So that's why I wrote the book Hide and Hip Hop. I'm sorry.
I'm so glad that you're here. You tell me the story. I'm glad you're here, and I'll let you know. I already was. I'm a special I don't really have a question, not yet. But I just want to say that. And what I want to say to you is that I saw PMK at the coffee shop when they were showing.
At Scarrett Bennett?
Yes,
in the gallery, yeah.
And I preached on it. I'm serious. There was a woman who worked at Scarrett Bennett, and I walked in the door, and I used to go over there periodically to have coffee and sit in that little room where they had all the books. And she said to me, yes. I walked in the door, and and I was looking around. She said, "There's a video over there you need to see." And I said, "Oh yeah, okay. I'm just going over here to the books room and all that kind of stuff." And she kept on saying to me, "You need to see that video." And I went in. She said, "Look," I said, "Okay, I'll see the video." So I went in and I saw that video, and I cried. And I was so touched by it. And I wrote something about it. So thank you very much.
Could you share with me a little of what the theme of the sermon was? Or you can email it to me.
I could email it to you.
Would you?
Yeah.
I really
but it was a real inspiration.
Wow.
So this is really unique for me. And so thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for watching it. I appreciate that. I really do.
Terrence, I have a question. Once you had made the decision, to come out, how did the industry embrace you? Did you notice a difference, or did you have support, or did you, what happened?
I was fortunate to have a lot of support. I had a huge support system when the book was announced, after it came out. I think because I had already worked in the entertainment industry, so I developed a lot of friendships with those persons. So they became support systems for me. They encouraged me to write the book. And one of the reasons they were very encouraging, because I talk about the majority of them in the book. And I had to go to them and let them know I'm putting you in the book.
Right.
So let's do that. So I was fortunate that I had a great relationship and rapport with them at that point where they helped contribute to the book. So they already knew what the book was about. What happened was, Corinne Stephens had came out with a book, Confessions of a Video Vixen, right before my book came out. So imagine coming out on the heels of that book. You know, her book was this tell-all about her and all these men that she did in the entertainment industry. And so everyone was looking for the next big thing. And so when you hear hiding hip hop about men who are on the down low who are hiding, they're expecting the same thing. And so they're expecting another Corinne Stephens book.
Right.
So I think that was some of the backlash that I received was, well, it's not exactly like Corinne's. I was like, well, no, it's not like Corinne's book. It's a totally different book. So when people started reading, like, oh my God, like your story is just so powerful and so compelling. And I think once people started reading the book, again, those support systems, those friends embraced me like, wow, like, thank you so much. And now we hope that other people will start coming out, start coming forward. And thank God, you know, for Wanda Sykes, who was brave enough to come forward and come out. And Frank Ocean, who recently came out as well, the artist, R&B singer. I think we're going to start seeing more or less people coming out in our communities. But I have been continuing to work in the industry, continue to get calls from people who work in the industry. So it didn't affect me. As a matter of fact, it opened more doors for me.
One more question on top of that. Do you feel that with Barack Obama and what he said about, you know, gay marriage and everything and all such stuff, do you feel is that one of the reasons why you also think that more people be coming out that way? Because, you know, he said that, you know, they're just like everybody else.
Right.
You know?
Well, okay. So they're just like everyone else. So yeah, we are like everyone else. I don't think it's because of Barack Obama.
No, I wouldn't say because of him. I'm saying you think that's also going to influence.
Influence who?
I mean, people coming out, you know.
For him being supportive of marriage equality?
Yeah, gay marriage equality and all of that.
No.
You don't think so?
No. I don't think, yeah, no. I don't think him having anything to do with it. I think the community has more so to say about how we respond and how we react to it. I think it's very interesting and compelling is that by human nature and divine, I think people of color are not homophobic because we have a condition to think we're homophobic by a society that has put those labels onto other people. So as a people of color, I think traditionally we're not homophobic people. If you listen to rap music and you listen to rappers, they'll tell you that they say, well, I say this because this is what my boys say. Just like if you listen to young kids, I don't know, do they use the word here, pause? Pause? Mm-hmm. Or no homo? Mm-hmm. You heard that saying?
Pause.
Pause.
Yes.
So young kids today, they have these sayings, no homo and pause. So if they refer to something, so like two guys and me having a conversation, and he say, oh, I may like your jeans, pause. Meaning that I'm trying to preface myself in thinking, I don't want you to think I'm trying to hit on you or that I like you or saying something in a sexual innuendo manner. I just like your jeans. But he has to preface it by saying pause. So I'm thinking, why you have to preface your conversation in the first place? But it's again, it's learned behavior. It's not something that we traditionally are who we are.
I've got a question for both of you, and I've read portions of both. I haven't finished either yet. And in each one, you invoke family so very much. Carolyn, you do that through your vignettes. And Terrence, you do that, you know, in a more linear fashion, but you both also invoke family. And as a writer, I wanted you all to talk about the perils and also the promising aspects of talking and writing about family, because in some cases you're writing about people who are still around, right? In other cases you're writing about people who, you know, going on. But clearly writing about family and loved ones and close friends is a precarious kind of thing, because they're there and you're writing about them. So could each one of you talk about that in terms of your process and all of that, whichever one wants to go first?
In my case, most of the people I wrote about are no longer here. Actually there's one person I think in there that is still with us.
What, your daughter?
Two, yeah, my daughter too, which was an issue. That's a good example. That's a great example, because she, when I told her I was doing it, she didn't want to talk to me until she read it. She was like, "Mom, no, you can't." And in fact, you know what? No, I actually told her after I'd done it. You know, so she couldn't tell me not to. But either way, it's about being honest and telling the truth from your point of view, and that's something actually I've learned from her a little bit. It's like, it may not be her story or someone else's perception. It may not be my story, but it's certainly my or their experience with the other individual. You know what I'm saying? And I think that as long as you're true to that, you know, there's nothing else you can do. You can't. I don't believe in embellishing. Unless I say, oh, this is a fiction piece, then I get to make up all I want. But if you're going to do that in this context, it's to be honest. And if somebody doesn't really appreciate that honesty, well, I think it's, you know, that's up to them to accept, you know, as long as it is the truth, you know.
She's absolutely right. When you write memoir, anyone in here interested in writing memoirs or doing a memoir book, you have to be very mindful, like, because your perspective of what happened, your history of what happened at that time and at that moment. So you're recounting your experience. And what happens is, sometimes, when you start talking to family members, incorporating family who are living, their recounting of the story is not the same as yours. So you try to be mindful of that when you're writing a story. But again, it's from your perspective of what you experienced and how it happened to you and how it looks for you. So I think in writing my book, that's how my experience looked for me. And so when my family who were living read it, they saw it differently from the way I saw it. Even though it happened, but my experience of it is what was different. Because I later found out, oh, well, there were certain things that did happen to occur that I was not aware of. But again, I was in such a traumatized state in my life that I couldn't possibly see something else happening lovingly and happy. To me, there was no rainbow. So I didn't see, you know, I was definitely for the colored girls who committed suicide when the rainbow was not enough, because my rainbow was definitely not enough. So writing memoirs, if you're interested in writing a memoir, you do have to be mindful that it's your story and how you see it at that moment and at that time. And it's very therapeutic. I found writing to be very therapeutic for me consistently as I write books, because you are, it's like a healing mechanism. I remember, I don't know if you all know Iyanla Vanzant, but she's been a mentor of mine. And I remember when I first wrote my book, Reclaim Your Power, and I was so scared when that book came out. And it's a self-help book for men of color. And I was afraid, because I was like, wow, I'm writing this book about helping men to heal. And I didn't have any credentials. I just had a bachelor's degree, and I was just a kid who created men's empowerment at that time, working in New York City at MTV. And I'm like, how am I writing a self-help book trying to help men? Like, how are people going to see me as some type of authority? Like, I'm not no spiritual guru. I don't walk around with incense burning, you know, sandals and shoes, you know, like a burqa or something. Because that was the look I thought spirituality looked like. But then you meet Iyanla Vanzant, and she's like, you know, her real name is Rhonda. She'll say, look, I'm Rhonda for real, but you know, Iyanla is her spiritual self. So, but I remember sitting with her, and she said, who gave you the authority to write the book? I said, well, God. She said, well, that's all you need to be writing the book for. Don't worry about anybody else. So she helped me to see, like, I am my own authority. I don't have to wait for somebody else to authorize me to tell the stories or to write what I'm writing. So I think that helped me heal a lot.
For both of you. You talked both very almost in a cavalier fashion about, you know, you started in the industry and you're working with Forest Whitaker. You're in the industry and now you're doing things with Nancy Glover. It couldn't have been that easy. Can you tell maybe a little anecdotal
We ain't got that
information
much
about how
time.
that I wasn't just that easy.
No, it's not that easy. I mean, first you got to start out with a dream and a vision and faith, and you got to know what you want, and then after that, that's where the fight begins. You know, it's almost like a call. You know, because I don't think anybody in their right mind would go into the entertainment business unless there was a call. I mean, I didn't see no burning bush, but I've been doing this for like 30 years, and I would like to change the game now. It's like a little late, but it's hard, and it's about storytelling. And I know you're a producer, I don't know a lot about your work, but as a writer, you're a storyteller, and it really is, you know, whatever capacity you are, whether you're a producer, whether you're the writer, or the director, it's about telling a story and sharing. It's like you said, like, I love Yana too, you know, and that validation. There was something, I was watching Oprah the other night, and she was talking about the 30,000 guests she'd had on her show, and the one common thread between all 30,000 of them was their need for validation. They wanted to know if what they were doing mattered to other people. And I think that unless you're armed with that on some level, believing that what you have to say, whether as a writer, producer, you don't get up in the morning to do anything because it's so hard unless you believe that at the core of you. You know what I mean?
You're absolutely right. I remember working. It does take a special person to work in the entertainment industry because you're dealing with personalities of celebrities. They're very special people. They are definitely in a world in and of their own. So it takes someone who has a very thick skin, but an adaptation, because you have to adapt really quickly to different personalities. And I think that was, again, a saving grace for me, is because I knew how not to get emotionally involved or wrapped up in something, because I had come from such a traumatic experience, so I wasn't emotional. You know, so I could work in the entertainment industry. Their attitudes and things didn't bother me. But getting into the industry is very challenging. It's very difficult. It's a lot of hard work, and it's a very thankless job. Because at the end of the day, people don't thank you. It's not like, oh, thank you. You know, we really appreciate. No, they expect for you to do it, because that's at the end of the day, like, we're celebrities. We expect for you to do this. This is your job, is to do this for me and for us. But I remember how I got to Spike Lee, and I was working on a movie called North with Rob Reiner, and I was an intern, and I wasn't getting paid. Actually, they were just giving me tokens. Because this at the time when New York had tokens. So, we have Metro cards now, but by that time we had tokens. So we would take, you know, they would give me tokens to go back and forth, to get back and forth, and they would feed me. I was like happy with that. Because, you know, production says you get to eat all day. So I was like, as long as you're feeding me and giving me transportation, I'm fine. But what I would do is, when they would give me assignments, I was a production assistant intern, and I have to run around the city. And because I knew my way around the city really fast, I would just save the tokens, because I would use them for the weekend to go hang out with my friends. And I would just walk around the city, because I knew how to get around the city really fast. So I remember there was a casting call for Spike Lee. He had just announced he was doing Crooklyn. And it just so happened that the production coordinator on the movie North had just finished working on Malcolm X with Spike Lee. So I was reading the Variety, which, you know, is the Bible for the production, television and film production. And I saw this, and I was so excited, and I told her, oh my God, I would love to work with Spike Lee. And she said, oh, well, I just finished working with Spike on this movie called Malcolm X. So she put a call in for me and got me an interview. And at that time, you know, Spike is notorious for not hiring people. He loves us, people of color, but he's not going to pay you if he can. He can get away with not paying you, he would not pay you. So they told me, well, we have an internship position available for you if you're interested in an internship. And I told them, well, I'm not really interested in an intern. I'm interning now with Rob Reiner. Like, why would I come intern for Spike Lee? I mean, it'd be great to work with Spike Lee, but I'm interning now. Like, I've been interning all my life. It's time to start getting paid now. So I remember going home. This is the benefit of growing up Kojic. I don't know if you, Church of God in Christ, Pentecostal. So I come from a very praying family, and my aunts would fast in a minute, and they'd pray on something. So I called home. I said, y'all need to pray on this job for me. So I went into fasting. So, you know, white folks, oh, sorry, this is white people in the room. But and they were like, why are you not eating? I'm fasting for the Lord. I'm trying to get this Spike Lee job. Y'all don't understand. And literally a week later, that same woman who told me we're only looking for interns called me. She said, our production secretary quit. So we promoted our production assistant to secretary, and we need a production assistant. And we're gonna hire you. And that's how I got my first job, paying job, working for Spike Lee. So it's all about who you know. I was at the right place at the right time, and praying and fasting.
I have a question about writing. Had you always loved writing? Had you always loved the written word? And once you started writing books, did it come with ease, or had you struggled with writing? And you know, talk a little bit about that process.
Well, I started out as a dramatist more than, I started out actually, as I was saying before, doing plays and stuff as, you know, as a kid, and then was in the theater a little bit, you know, studied acting a few years, and that's something that will teach you a lot about storytelling in terms of beingness and behavior. So, and locating, isolating moments and detail and visuals and sensory. And so I kind of came to storytelling through that and writing scenes and screenplays. I'm a screenwriter. I just finished writing a script for GMC. I'm working on another project here as a film. So I didn't start writing prose until this was my first complete prose thing, actually. And aside from, there's another project that this kind of spun out of called Nouns in the Road, because I'm also a photographer, so I started my photographs. If you go to nounsintheroad.com, there's a selection of photographs with little stories and vignettes with the photos. And so I kind of started writing prose like that. About, you know, locations and places and people and things. But for long form writing, I started with character, you know, through acting and, you know, just getting the details and the nuances of people and things like that and letting them kind of tell the story, you know. And you learn that stuff in acting, you know, let them, their choices. And I really, 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 really try to stay true to character. I just wrote a short story, actually, for the next book. It's, again, the first prose I've written fiction about this character, and it was really because he just started talking to me. It was like this, it was like a what if, you know. I was watching the end of, I think, Easter Parade with Judy Garland. I'm a huge Judy Garland fan. And with her and Mickey Rooting singing, and I don't know, again, being a writer, this stuff just pops in your head, doesn't it? I was sitting there and I was watching Judy Garland dance and sing, and I was like, man, I wonder what would happen if Judy Garland had a little black friend that came to visit her at the peak of her career in Hollywood. Man, from Michigan, that she hadn't seen since she was 12 years old. And it just kind of, just idea, just like, and I could see the little kid, Boyd, you know, and it just stuck with me, stuck with me, stuck with me. And I was, again, the brain works. I was thinking about walking up Vermont Boulevard and how hot it was, you know, in the summertime in LA, and that's when the story started with this kid, and, you know, coming to LA and having to find a colored motel and then getting off the bus and walking up to see his friend he hadn't seen since elementary school, who's now a star. And so it's like you just get these aha moments of you know, inspiration that, that's how I start writing. It's like a visual. It's always like something visual that's for me.
Yeah. For me, I was blessed in school that my teachers encouraged me to write because they saw that I could write. So I was very fortunate in high school and in college. Professors would push me and challenge me in my writing. And it wasn't until you get a book editor who really tells you whether or not you can write or not. Because I've gone through, I'm blessed now to have the same editor from Hiding Hip Hop to my book Mogul to my next book that I'm working on. So he knows my writing style. Like, you really have to find your voice, you hone your voice. And like she said, you start hearing these characters. I live in this world in my head, and as writers we do a lot. And I'm always thinking about the what if. I'm always in scenarios, I'm looking at and watching people's mannerisms, because you have to, as a writer, you're taking in everything around you, the sensories, because you have to write based on sensories. So I'm always cognizant of my environment. What are people doing? How do they say it? How do they look? How are they walking and acting? And then I try to transpose that into these characters who are speaking in my head,